Welcome back to the Deep Dive, the place where we cut through the noise, take a look at the essential insights from the material, and, well, give you the knowledge you need to navigate the world.
And today, we are diving deep into something I think affects pretty much everyone listening. Procrastination.
Ah, yes.
Yeah,
The old, I'll do it later.
exactly. That persistent, almost gnawing habit of putting off the important things. Choosing the immediate comfort, maybe scrolling your phone,
Yeah.
instead of tackling what really needs doing.
Okay, let's unpack this because, honestly, if you're listening, you've probably done this. You look at a big project, maybe a difficult phone call you need to make, or heck, even just the dishes piling up, and you think, you know what? Tomorrow feels much better. Why? Why do we consistently pick that short-term relief when we know it bites us later?
That internal battle, it's incredibly common, right? But the way we usually frame it, the way society talks about it is, well, it's fundamentally wrong. When someone delays, the immediate reaction, often even in our own heads, is to slap on a label, usually lazy, or maybe lacks discipline.
Right, that's the go-to explanation, just lazy.
But the core insight here, the thing that really changes the game and forms the basis for this whole deep dive, is that procrastination isn't really about being lazy. It's not a character flaw in that sense.
Okay, so if it's not laziness, what is it?
The research is pretty clear on this now. Experts, like Dr. Tim Peichel, who's done a lot of work in this area, they define it differently. Procrastination isn't a failure of time management. It's fundamentally a problem of emotion management.
Emotion management. Okay, say more about that. That's a big shift.
It really is. Think about it. We're not actually delaying the task itself. We're delaying the negative feeling we think that task is going to stir up inside us.
So let me see if I get this. If I have like a really complex financial report to do, I'm not avoiding the spreadsheet itself.
Not primarily, no.
Yeah. I'm avoiding the feeling of what? Confusion, maybe frustration, or just sheer boredom, or that nagging self-doubt that whispers, you can't do this.
Precisely. You're anticipating those feelings, and your brain goes, nope, don't want to feel that right now. Delay becomes this sort of instant mood fix.
Wow. So procrastination is basically a coping mechanism, a way to deal with difficult moods, even if it's, totally counterproductive in the long run.
Exactly. Your brain flags the task, warning, may cause anxiety, and then offers a quick escape hatch, avoidance. And in that split second, avoiding it does give you this little flash of relief.
And that's the trap.
That is the psychological trap right there. That tiny reward trains your brain to do it again next time.
Okay, so this completely reframes our mission here today then. If we're dealing with emotions first, tasks second, we can't just wait around hoping to feel motivated, can we?
Absolutely not. That whole wait for inspiration thing is a major part of the problem.
So we need to dig into those underlying psychological roots, understand the fears, the traps, and then crucially, give you, our listeners, some real actionable, behavior-focused steps to actually break that cycle. Because waiting for the perfect mood, it's just not going to happen.
Right. We have to learn to act even when we feel anxious or bored or overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So when we make that shift, right, from thinking I'm lazy to asking, what feeling am I avoiding? The whole picture gets richer, more complex.
Yeah, it becomes less about willpower and more about emotional awareness.
Exactly. And we can actually synthesize the research into roughly 3 main emotional drivers, these underlying currents that pull people towards delaying action.
Okay, let's get into those. What's really going on beneath the surface when we say, I just don't want to do this?
Well, driver number 1, and this one trips up a lot of really capable, intelligent people, is what we can call the perfectionism trap.
Perfectionism. I think many people can relate to that one, wanting things to be just right.
But it goes beyond just wanting high standards. Here, the individual delays starting because the internal pressure for the final result is just. It's paralyzing. The standard isn't just excellent, it has to be flawless. Impossible, really.
Okay, but how does delaying help the perfectionist? Wouldn't starting sooner give them more time to perfect it? Logically, anyway.
Logically, yes, but emotionally. The mechanism is subtle but quite powerful. By not starting, the person protects themselves from any potential criticism.
Yeah.
And more importantly, they get to maintain the illusion of perfection.
Illusion of perfection? What do you mean?
Think about it like this. Imagine a writer has this amazing, groundbreaking idea for a novel. As long as that idea exists only in their head, it's perfect, right? It's brilliant, potentially world-changing.
Untouched by reality.
Exactly. The second they actually start writing, putting words on the page, they introduce the possibility of flaws, of limitations, of it not quite living up to that perfect mental image. They introduce the chance it could be judged and found lacking.
I see. So the blank page or the unopened file, it represents this infinite, flawless potential. But the moment you make the first mark, you've made it real and therefore potentially imperfect.
You've nailed it. By delaying, they're protecting that potential. They're essentially managing their self-esteem by avoiding the risk of proving their perfect idea might just be, well, human and flawed when executed.
Wow, okay. That hits hard. So they prefer the certainty of delay over the uncertainty of maybe not being perfect.
That's a great way to put it. Now, that connects closely to the second driver, which goes even deeper into identity. It's about equating self-worth with performance.
Okay, how's that different from the perfectionism trap?
It's related, but the core anxiety is different. Here, the fear isn't just about the task being imperfect. It's about the person being inadequate if the task fails. Their sense of self-worth is completely tangled up with their success.
So if the project fails, I am a failure.
That's the underlying belief, often learned early in life, perhaps through being praised mainly for achievements. The stakes become astronomically high. It's not just, oh, this presentation didn't go well. It's, this presentation failed, therefore I am fundamentally incompetent.
Good grief. That's a crushing weight to carry into any task. No wonder the brain wants to avoid it.
Exactly. That fear of fundamental failure is so intense, so painful, that the brain just hits the emergency eject button. Avoidance. Putting off the task gives this immediate temporary relief from that overwhelming anxiety.
And that relief feels good in the moment.
It feels very good. It's like instant mood repair. And that reinforces the behavior. Avoidance gets linked with comfort.
But wait, here's the paradox again, right? If the stakes are that high, my whole self-worth is on the line. Wouldn't starting earlier, preparing more, actually increase the chances of success and therefore protect my self-worth in the long run? Why choose the guaranteed stress of a last-minute rush?
That's the tragedy of it. The rational part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, knows that. It knows starting early is logical. But the emotional, more primal part of the brain, the limbic system, it's laser focused on right now. How do I feel right this second?
And avoiding feels better right this second.
Much better. The immediate comfort of, say, watching another YouTube video, that's a tangible, instant reward. The reward of finishing the project well in 2 weeks, that's abstract, distant, and requires pushing through discomfort now. The immediate reward almost always wins.
So the brain learns avoidance, comfort. And that short-term win overrides the long-term logic, creating this downward spiral of delay, guilt, more stress, more avoidance.
You got it. It escalates over time. Okay, so that covers the really identity-linked fears. But what about tasks that aren't about our ego? What about things that are just plain boring, like, doing expenses or cleaning the bathroom?
Yeah, good point. Does that fit in here too?
It does. That brings us to driver 3, boredom or cognitive overload. Some tasks are just inherently tedious, right? Our brains crave novelty, stimulation. Monotony feels almost painful.
Like wading through bureaucratic paperwork. Ugh.
Exactly. But often it's less about pure boredom and more about the task just feeling huge and overwhelming. Cognitive overload. You look at a massive unstructured project like plan the entire conference, and your first thought isn't boredom, it's sheer confusion.
It's that where do I even begin feeling.
Precisely. That question itself creates this kind of mental friction, this cognitive strain. It feels hard just thinking about how to start.
And the brain doesn't like that feeling.
Not at all. It interprets that excessive cognitive load, just trying to map out the complex steps, as a kind of threat, or at least a major energy drain.
Yeah.
And that triggers the flight response.
And flight in the 21st century often means
Reaching for your phone.
yes.
Opening a new browser tab. Turning on the TV. Anything that provides an immediate, easy distraction. These things require virtually zero cognitive effort and give you that little dopamine hit.
A perfect antidote to the mental strain of the complex task.
It's the path of least resistance.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's fear of failure, the paralysis of perfectionism, or just the cognitive pain of a task being too big or too boring, the underlying pattern is the same.
The brain is choosing immediate emotional comfort over long-term goals and well-being.
Yes, we get that quick hit of relief now, but we basically mortgage our future peace of mind. We accumulate this massive stress debt that our future self has to pay, often with interest.
It's the ultimate act of emotional debt. Okay, understanding these drivers is huge. Now, how do we start restructuring that debt? Right, so understanding the why, the emotional roots, is absolutely crucial. But I know the person listening right now is thinking, okay, I get it. But how do I actually stop doing it? If this is a habit that's really holding you back, acknowledging it's not a moral failing is step one. Step two has to be practical action, right?
Absolutely. And this is where it gets, well, frankly, difficult.
Yeah.
Because it requires accepting a fundamental truth. Overcoming chronic procrastination means changing your behavior first before the feeling changes.
You can't wait until you feel like it.
You cannot wait until you feel calm or confident or motivated. You have to learn to take action while you're still feeling anxious or bored or overwhelmed. The feeling follows the action, not the other way around.
Okay. So we need strategies that bypass the feeling and jump straight into doing something. Let's start with strategy number one. This one tackles what is often the biggest hurdle, just getting started, that initial resistance.
That first step can feel like climbing Mount Everest, can it? There's this concept in behavioral science called activation energy, the mental effort needed to initiate a task. Anxiety massively increases that activation energy.
Making it feel almost impossible to begin.
Right. So we need a way to radically lower that barrier. And that's where the famous 2-minute rule comes in.
Ah, yes, I've heard of this. Popularized by James Clear, right?
That's right. The basic rule is incredibly simple. If a task takes less than 2 minutes to complete, just do it immediately. Don't even think about it. Don't put it on a list. Just do it.
Like putting a dish straight into the dishwasher instead of the sink, or replying to that quick email.
Exactly. But the real power, the genius of it, is how you adapt it for those big, overwhelming tasks, the ones that take way more than 2 minutes.
How does that work?
You break down the daunting task into the very first tiny step, a step that takes 2 minutes or less. Your only goal is to complete that micro step.
Okay, give us some examples. Make it concrete. How do you apply this to something big?
Okay. Let's say your big goal is go to the gym. That feels like a lot. Your 2-minute starting task is put on my gym shoes and socks. That's it.
Just put on the shoes.
Just put on the shoes. Or say the task is write the 10-page report. Overwhelming. Your 2-minute task. Open a new document, type the title and today's date, and save it in the correct folder.
That's it?
That's it. Or do my taxes. 2-minute start. Find last year's tax return file. Or clean the kitchen. 2-minute start. Clear just the stuff off the countertop.
The power here feels huge because you're shifting the goal entirely. You're not aiming for completion anymore, at least not initially.
Exactly. You're aiming solely to overcome that initial point of resistance, to build a tiny bit of momentum. Because once your gym shoes are on, well, the barrier to actually walking out the door feels significantly smaller, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're already halfway there mentally.
You're basically tricking your emotional brain. You're saying, hey, I'm not asking you to climb the whole mountain right now. Just tie one shoelace. The commitment is so small, so non-threatening, that it usually doesn't trigger that big, fear-based shutdown.
And momentum is the key. Once you start, it's easier to keep going.
Momentum is the great enemy of procrastination. That first tiny action pierces the bubble of avoidance. Okay, so that helps with starting, but what about tasks that just feel enormous in scope? The ones that cause that cognitive overload we talked about.
Right, this project is so huge it'll never end feeling. That leads to strategy two, which you call micro-chunking and managing cognitive load.
Yes. We know big, vague tasks trigger anxiety. So the solution is intentional, almost aggressive division. You have to break the task down into components that are so small, so concrete, that they genuinely do not trigger anxiety.
Smaller than you probably think you need to go.
Much smaller. If the thought, write my thesis, makes you want to crawl under the covers, then that's not your goal. Your goal needs to become almost ridiculously tiny.
So instead of write the chapter on 18th century French poetry,
your goal might be find just one relevant academic article this morning, or maybe even just open the library database and type in one keyword.
One article, or even just one keyword search. Okay.
Or draft only 3 bullet points for the introduction section. It has to be finite, achievable, and crucially feel manageable to your anxious brain. It shouldn't send up those panic flares that lead straight back to avoidance.
This sounds very connected to techniques like the Pomodoro technique.
Absolutely. There's a deep psychological reason why things like the Pomodoro technique, working in focus bursts, typically 25 minutes, then taking a short break, are so effective against procrastination.
It seems so simple, almost childish. 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off. Why does that work?
Because it's fundamentally an anxiety management tool disguised as a productivity hack. When you tell your brain, look, you only have to deal with this difficult, maybe boring, maybe anxiety-provoking task for the next 25 minutes, It changes everything.
How so?
The task becomes temporary. It's not this endless, undefined slog stretching out before you. It's a finite challenge. I can endure anything for 25 minutes. That structure lowers the perceived threat, makes the cognitive load feel sustainable.
It contains the discomfort.
Precisely. It prevents that feeling of being overwhelmed and makes it possible to just begin and then continue, one manageable chunk at a time. Okay, now for strategy 3, and this one. This one can be tough, especially for people who are high achievers or very self-critical. It's about using the antidote of self-compassion.
Self-compassion. Okay. This feels like the opposite of the just push through it, you lazy bum approach that many of us default to internally.
It is the exact opposite, and it's critical we unpack this because our intuition often tells us that being hard on ourselves, using harsh self-criticism, I'm so useless, I'm such a procrastinator, I'm inadequate, that this shame will somehow motivate us into action.
Right, the internal drill sergeant approach. Shame yourself into gear.
But the research consistently shows the opposite is true. Harsh self-criticism actually fuels procrastination.
How? Why doesn't beating yourself up work?
Think about it. When you procrastinate, you already feel bad, right? There's usually guilt, anxiety, maybe frustration.
Definitely.
Now add shame on top of that really painful feeling of being fundamentally flawed or bad as a person. What does that do? It dramatically increases the negative emotions associated with the task and with the very act of failing.
It raises the stakes even higher.
Exactly. If failing at this task confirms my deepest fear that I am inadequate, then that feeling is so devastating. My brain's protective mechanism goes into overdrive. The only perceived safe option is more avoidance to shield the self from that crushing confirmation of worthlessness. Shame basically pours gasoline on the procrastination fire.
Wow. Okay, so the very tool we think is motivating us is actually paralyzing us further. That's huge. So what does self-compassion look like in practice right in that moment when you've delayed something and feel bad about it?
The research points to a much more effective path, treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you'd offer a friend who was struggling. It's a two-step process, generally.
Okay, what's step 1?
Step 1 is just acknowledging the shared human experience, recognizing that the struggle is normal. So instead of, I'm so lazy, you might say to yourself, okay, I'm feeling really anxious about starting this report. That's a difficult feeling, and it's perfectly normal for people to want to avoid things that make them feel anxious.
So you normalize the feeling first. You stop making it a personal failing.
Precisely. You connect with common humanity. Lots of people struggle with this. Step 2 is decoupling your self-worth from the task's outcome.
Getting away from that, if I fail, I am a failure mindset.
Yes. The compassionate inner voice might say something like, my value as a person isn't tied to how well this presentation goes. This task feels tough right now, that's okay. Let's just see if we can take one small, tiny first step together.
Like you're gently coaching yourself rather than yelling.
Exactly. You're lowering the emotional stakes just enough to make action feel possible again. Self-compassion isn't about letting yourself off the hook entirely. It's about creating the emotional safety needed to climb back onto the hook and re-engage with the task without crushing yourself. It breaks the shame avoidance cycle. So we've established that procrastination is fundamentally about managing, or rather avoiding, difficult emotions. It's emotional delay. We're waiting for the anxiety or boredom or self-doubt to magically disappear before we start.
Which, as we've said, rarely happens. The feeling doesn't just vanish.
Right. So to make lasting progress, we need a couple more key mindset shifts. These are about changing our fundamental relationship with work and discomfort, forcing ourselves to act alongside those feelings.
Okay. And the first big mindset shift tackles perhaps the most common trap of all for chronic procrastinators. You call it abandoning the motivation myth.
Yes, this myth is incredibly pervasive. It's the belief that you must wait for the right mood to strike. You wait for inspiration, for the muse to arrive, for this magical wave of motivation to wash over you before you can possibly begin.
I know that feeling so well. You sit there, maybe staring at the screen, feeling guilty, just waiting to feel like doing it.
And maybe you spend hours waiting, achieving nothing except accumulating more guilt and frustration because the feeling never arrived.
Exactly. Those wasted hours are the worst.
The reality, confirmed by loads of behavioral research, is a complete U-turn from this expectation. Motivation does not precede action. It follows it.
Okay, say that again. Motivation follows action.
Yes, it's the result of starting, not the prerequisite for starting. When you force yourself, using something like the 2-minute rule, to take that first tiny action, you gain a little bit of momentum. Maybe you find that one citation, you type that title.
You get a small win.
A a small win. And that tiny bit of progress, however small, often releases just enough dopamine, just enough feeling of efficacy to generate the internal motivation needed to take the next small step.
So the core rule has to be, start the behavior, don't wait for the feeling. Act your way into feeling motivated, don't try to think your way into it.
You've got it. Action is the spark. Just thinking about a difficult task often makes it feel even harder, more daunting. But actually starting it, even in the smallest way, usually makes it feel more manageable because progress itself is inherently rewarding.
Yeah.
It generates the very motivation we were mistakenly waiting for passively.
Okay, that's a huge paradigm shift. Act first, feel motivated later. Now, moving to strategy 4. This one feels very practical, almost like a clever hack targeting the brain's reward system directly. It's called temptation bundling.
Yeah, this comes straight out of behavioral economics, understanding how we respond to incentives. We know the procrastinating brain craves immediate gratification, that instant comfort. So temptation bundling essentially hacks that craving.
How does it work?
The principle is simple. You pair something you need to do, but find unpleasant or boring with something you genuinely want to do, something highly enjoyable, and you make a rule. You only get to do the enjoyable thing while you are doing the unpleasant one.
Ah, so the unpleasant task becomes the gateway, the price of admission, for the immediate reward the brain actually wants.
Exactly. It links the want directly to the should.
Okay, give us some examples. How might this look in real life?
It has to be a strict pairing. For instance, I love listening to my favorite Julie podcast, but I only allow myself to listen to it while I'm doing the boring household chores like laundry or cleaning.
Okay, or maybe.
I really want to watch the next episode of that addictive streaming series, but I only let myself watch it while I'm on the exercise bike at the gym. Or I only get my fancy coffee while I'm processing my work emails.
This feels particularly clever because it delivers that instant reward. The procrastinating brain is seeking the dopamine hit from the podcast or the show, but makes it entirely conditional on enduring the difficult or boring activity.
Right. It bypasses the whole problem of delayed gratification. The gratification becomes instant, but it's tied directly to the action you need to take. It creates this powerful positive association.
Instead of associating chores with boredom, your brain starts associating chores with getting to listen to that podcast you love.
Precisely. The brain sees the unpleasant task not just as a hurdle, but as the necessary key to unlock the immediate high-value reward. It reframes the whole experience.
That's a brilliant behavioral hack.
Mhm.
Okay, our final mindset shift. This one feels deeper, more empathetic maybe, and potentially carries the biggest emotional weight if you tend to delay things. It's about cultivating empathy for your future self.
Yes, this shifts the perspective from self-criticism or just task completion to something more like interpersonal kindness, but directed inwards towards the person you will be tomorrow or next week.
Explain that. How does thinking about future me help?
When you procrastinate, think about what you're actually doing. You're not just avoiding a task now. You are actively choosing to dump the resulting stress, the chaos, the likely rushed, lower quality work, and the intense anxiety onto your future self.
Ugh, yeah. And future me is always really annoyed at past me for doing that.
Always. Future you inherits the mess, the pressure, the all-nighter. So the practice here is, before you give in to the urge to delay, pause for just a second and ask yourself this question. What is one small kindness I can do right now for my future self?
Framing action now as a gift to future you.
Exactly. Taking even a tiny step forward, writing just one paragraph, making that one phone call, paying that one bill becomes an act of generosity. It's positive, it's forward-looking self-care. You're not doing it just to tick a box or avoid shame. You're doing it to actively reduce the suffering of the person you will be tomorrow.
That reframes the work completely. It's not a punishment I have to endure. It's a compassionate act I'm performing for someone I care about my future self.
Beautifully put. If you just draft those 3 bullet points today, you're literally gifting future. You maybe 10 minutes less stress tomorrow morning and a much better starting point. You're protecting them from the acute pain of that looming deadline hitting them unprepared. It leverages compassion, not condemnation.
Okay, this has been an incredibly insightful, really detailed deep dive. Let's try and synthesize the absolute core message for everyone listening.
I think the first and maybe the most liberating takeaway is this. Procrastination isn't you being fundamentally lazy or broken. It's not a moral failing. It is essentially a signal.
A signal telling you something specific.
Right. It's signaling that the task ahead is triggering some kind of underlying discomfort, maybe fear, maybe anxiety, maybe perfectionism, maybe just boredom or overwhelm that your emotional brain is trying desperately to avoid dealing with right now.
And knowing it's a signal, not a flaw, changes how we respond. We can't just wait for the feeling to magically disappear. That's the motivation myth we busted.
Exactly. So instead, we have to use practical behavior and structure to manage that emotion. That means ruthlessly breaking things down into those micro chunks.
Using the 2-minute rule to just get started.
Using structures like Pomodoro to make the duration feel finite and less threatening. And, crucially, practicing self-compassion when, not if, but when you slip up, because harsh self-talk just digs the hole deeper.
So the call to action is really, heed the signal, acknowledge the emotion without judgment, lower the activation energy with a tiny first step.
And just take that 2-minute action immediately. Just put on the running shoes, just open the document, just find the bill. Let momentum build from there.
And ultimately, thinking about it bigger picture, since we're really delaying feelings when we procrastinate, getting better at this is actually about building a core component of emotional intelligence, isn't it?
That's a fantastic final thought. It really is. Mastering procrastination isn't about eliminating discomfort. It's about developing the capacity to function effectively, to take action, alongside discomfort, alongside anxiety, alongside boredom.
Instead of demanding that those feelings go away before we can start.
Exactly. Real emotional maturity involves accepting that the fear or the boredom might be present, but choosing to act anyway, often as that kindness to your future self.
Yeah.
You become the architect of your own future calm rather than a victim of your present discomfort.
Powerful stuff. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the real psychology of delay. If you know someone who struggles with putting things off, maybe share this conversation with them. It might just offer a new perspective.
We'll be back soon with more insights to help you understand the world and hopefully get out of your own way a little more effectively.
Keep going.